In a world of oligarchs and opulence, the struggle to stay at the top is often one that is well beyond the scope of what everyday people can imagine. Such was the unsettling story of Yevhen Shcherban and his wife Nadezhda as they soared high above most of the people on the planet in their pursuit of power. The day was November 3rd, 1996. As the brisk day began, Yevhen and his family were en route to the Donetsk airport from Moscow after attending singer Iosif Kobzon's wedding anniversary. As the private jet touched down and taxied its way to the drop-off point, the calamity awaiting them lay concealed among the trusted staff. Yevhen, in high spirits of the previous evening's events and happy to be home, stepped out of his jet and descended the stairs to the tarmac with his wife and one of his 3 sons, Ruslan. However, as he set foot onto his beloved city ground, delight turned to disaster in the blink of an eye. While walking from the plane to his bulletproof Chevy Caprice, 3 men dressed as public force officers suddenly drew their submachine guns and opened fire. The barrage of bullets cut down Yevhen, one shot piercing through his head, while the rest found targets in his wife and 2 other members who were actually airport staff. As we probe further into this unresolved case, the mystery deepens. Shcherban was far from a typical entrepreneur. He was involved in multiple ventures, from metal and alcohol to the energy sector, which held the utmost importance. As a formidable tycoon, his impact coursed through the arteries of Donbas region's economy. The empire he molded was more than just a union of businesses. It was a testament to his astute entrepreneurial skills and a symbol of might that echoed across regions. In the corporate domain, Shcherban was a formidable adversary. His operations in metal and alcohol yielded high profits, but it was the energy sector that significantly distinguished him. It was a lucrative yet perilous battle for dominance, where Shcherban was a major participant. His clasp over this crucial resource placed him amidst an intense rivalry for supremacy in the industry. However, Shcherban's departure created a void of power. The foundation of his empire began to tremble, and opportunistic predators began to encircle. His businesses, once under his firm command, found themselves in the grip of new overlords. Figures like Rinat Akhmetov and Serhiy Taruta swept in, claiming control and refashioning the economic landscape of the Donbas region. Shcherban's family, left with a modest inheritance, could only spectate as the empire he had constructed was dismantled and parceled out among the power-thirsty. The event served as a stark reminder of the transience of authority and the cutthroat world of business. It seemed all but blatant that Yevhen's death was orchestrated for the exact purpose of redistributing his wealth and power. In the fallout of such a notorious assassination, blame was assigned, and a multitude of suspects found themselves under scrutiny. The narrative intensifies as we penetrate the sphere of political machinations and the gas distribution in the region. Foremost among those implicated in the heinous act were ex-Prime Minister Pavlo Lazarenko and subsequently Yulia Tymoshenko. But why would a former Prime Minister, and as we now know, a future Prime Minister, want Yevhen Shcherban dead? It's because both had significant stakes in the profitable natural gas industry, a domain in which Shcherban had a substantial investment. Pavlo Lazarenko, a man of influence, once controlled the Ukrainian government. His involvement in the case was more than idle gossip. Indeed, in the year 2020, Shcherban's son openly pointed the finger at Lazarenko as the actual benefactor of the assassination. We then encounter Yulia Tymoshenko, a powerful figure in her own right. Initially, she was pulled into the vortex of allegations. Her stake in the natural gas industry positioned her as a direct adversary to Shcherban. Could removing Yevhen have been a power play to put her in office? True or not, something Yevhen's son said struck a chord somewhere. It wasn't long after his accusation that Shcherban's son, in an unforeseen development, withdrew his allegations against Tymoshenko. Besides these political personalities, doubts also circulated around various oligarchs, who conveniently came into possession of Shcherban's business empire. Rinat Akhmetov and Serhiy Taruta were among those who seized control of Shcherban's metal, alcohol and gas enterprises post his demise. Yet, despite rampant allegations and intense probing, solid proof was elusive. The homicide, cloaked in enigma and conjecture, continued to pose a convoluted conundrum. The suspects, the motives, and the political underhandedness, these facets contributed to a spellbinding narrative. Even so, the reality continued to evade both investigators and the public. As we burrow deeper into this intricate network of power, profits and puzzles, brace yourself for the ensuing trial and the unresolved mystery that looms in the foreground. In the aftermath of the airport assassination, a number of individuals were apprehended and prosecuted for the murders, culminating with 3 being handed down life sentences. Yet, has justice been genuinely meted out? In the wake of Yevhen Shcherban's savage elimination, the trial was a tumultuous torrent of allegations, refutations, and fervent arguments. 3 individuals were condemned to lifelong captivity, a judgment that superficially signified the end of this horrific tale. However, the conclusion of the judicial proceedings left an array of unresolved issues. Uncertainties and disputes hovered over the verdict like a menacing storm, casting lengthy, perturbing shadows on the visage of justice. Many queried the veracity of the legal process. The reason? The account conveyed in the courtrooms failed to definitively respond to a paramount query. Who was the real architect of this icily calculated assassination? Conjectures implicated a range of political personas and tycoons. Preceding Prime Minister Pavlo Lazarenko and subsequently Yulia Tymoshenko were linked to the crime. However, in a revelation as gripping as a detective novel, Shcherban's heir withdrew allegations against Tymoshenko, asserting that Lazarenko was the true financier of the murders. Absent of substantial proof, these assertions merely remained as unverified declarations. The trial also fell short of clarifying the destiny of Shcherban's expansive commercial dominion. It was appropriated by personalities like Rinat Akhmetov and Serhiy Taruta, as per his progeny. A scant inheritance was all that was reserved for Shcherban's family, inciting inquiries about the allocation of his prosperity and possessions. Despite the verdicts, the reality behind Shcherban's demise stayed obscured. The query lingers: who genuinely masterminded Yevhen Shcherban's extermination? Decades have elapsed since the notorious incident, yet the ghost of the crime continues to loom over Ukraine. The unexpected execution of Yevhen Shcherban, a luminary in the gas industry, created a tremor that reverberated across the nation. The aftermath of his untimely demise influenced not just the gas sector, also shook the political environment. His death signified a power shift in the Donbas region, triggering a rush for dominance that etched a permanent scar on the nation's consciousness. Assumptions regarding the case remain numerous and diverse. The crime scene became a labyrinth of political machinations, individual conflicts, and relentless aspirations. Murmurs of plots and alliances persist, pointing the finger at a series of figures in the corridors of power. Yevhen Shcherban persists as one of Ukraine's most infamous unresolved mysteries. As time marches on, truth appears to recede more and more into the distance.
In the business world's shadows, a lethal danger hides, unseen yet impending. Picture a man, Akhat Bragin, a Volga Tatar descendant born in Ukraine's heart. Far from the shimmering world of enterprise, Bragin, a butcher, carved his way with no silver spoon but a meat cleaver. However, destiny had other plans. Instead of pursuing his education at the Donetsk Soviet Trade Institute, he chose to drop out, turning his back on a promising, secure future. As one opportunity faded, another emerged. The volatile and risky business world summoned Bragin, and he embraced it. Starting from scratch, he clawed his way into Donetsk Oblast's mobster world, infamous for its intricate and perilous dynamics. This was not his endgame. He set his sights higher and eventually found leading the Shakhtar Donetsk soccer club. From a slaughterhouse to a soccer field, Bragin's ascension was nothing short of extraordinary. His journey, showcasing his resilience and daring, was defined by determination and defiance against the odds. He was a living embodiment of the saying, "from rags to riches." His influence and stature expanded as he transitioned from a simple butcher to a notable figure in Donetsk's business world. But with Bragin's rising star came escalating risks. Power attracts opponents. Wouldn't you agree? 1994 was a year of victory and volatility for Bragin. It was a year that would forever be inked in the pages of Ukrainian history, especially for Akhat Bragin. As a successful entrepreneur and the president of Shakhtar Donetsk football club, Bragin was a man who elicited admiration and terror in equal parts. Nevertheless, danger was quietly festering in the background. At the center of the Donetsk Oblast, a scheme was taking shape that would cause ripples throughout the region. An assassination attempt on Bragin, a man who was as deeply woven into the city's fabric as the steel and coal that bolstered its economy. The specifics of this bid remain enveloped in intrigue, a puzzle that thickens with each passing year. On March 19, 1994, Bragin was visiting his hometown of Pisky. The sun rose on his small, quaint hamlet like most beautiful spring days, but an unseen tempest was already rolling toward Akhat's home. While enjoying the weather and open air, Bragin strolled through his yard to check on his pigeon coop. As he fed and cared for his birds, a sudden barrage of bullets flew into his nest, shredding the coop and its inhabitants. Against all odds, he stepped out of the smoke and rubble, a testament to his unyielding spirit. But how did he escape? Some argue pure fortune, others propose that Bragin had advanced warning. The truth, as is often the case, is likely a combination of the two. The assassination bid on Bragin was more than just violence. It was a chilling reminder of the dangerous undercurrents of business disputes and organized crime that pervaded Donetsk in the mid-90s. Bragin's survival was hailed as a triumph over the shadowy world of organized crime, but it also served as a bone-chilling alert, a reminder that the shadow of death was never far. Following the botched assassination attempt, Bragin's existence took on a new dimension. Every move was analyzed, every decision dissected. As the president of Shakhtar Donetsk and a major figure in the city's business scene, he was ceaselessly in the public gaze. Yet, despite the relentless scrutiny, Bragin remained a man of enigma, a man whose true objectives and purposes were only known to himself. Bragin survived, but the grim reach of death was far from dispelled. The very next year, in October 1995, this month became forever imprinted in Ukrainian crime annals. An ordinary day in Donetsk was dramatically altered into a scene of destruction. The fateful October day found Bragin at a football match, oblivious to the danger at foot. As the kickoff for the game approached, so did the deadly plot against him. Bragin sat in anticipation in his owner's box, ready for the match against Tavria to commence. Shortly after the clock began ticking, another timer stopped. The meticulously planted bomb exploded, transforming the stadium into a terrifying scene of chaos and destruction. The brute force of the blast not only took Bragin's life, but also instilled a sense of fear and uncertainty across Donetsk. The immediate aftermath presented a scene of shock and confusion. As the smoke dissipated, the horrifying reality of the devastation was revealed. The once lively stadium stood as a silent testament to a life abruptly ended, and a city plunged into the harsh glare of a gruesome crime. Not only was this assassination successful in claiming Bragin's life, it took several other innocent bystanders in the process. Following Bragin's demise, a formidable task awaited the investigators. This was not just an ordinary probe into death, but a plunge into a tempestuous vortex where the worlds of business, organized crime, and football intertwined. Amid this turbulent scenario stood a key figure, former Donetsk police officer Vyacheslav Sinenko. In 2000, a rival gang took credit for the attack and several others in the area. In response, an international warrant for Sinenko was issued and the hunt began. He was found in Greece, where he moved the year prior with his family. After his extradition back to Ukraine, he was put on trial, believed to be the linchpin to the puzzle that was Bragin's death. Yet even the sanctuary of the courtroom couldn't offer concrete answers. Sinenko was initially found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. However, he quickly appealed the verdict. Lacking sufficient proof, Sinenko was acquitted by the Supreme Court, leading to a startling turn of events that sent the investigation reeling. It relentlessly sought to pierce the shroud of ambiguity, revealing a terrain riddled with peril and mystery. The Bragin episode was more than just a homicide investigation. It served as an aperture into the intricate and hazardous interplay of commerce and organized crime in Ukraine during the 90s. During this time, power was a lethal weapon. Wealth served as a shield, and survival was the ultimate pursuit. Coincidentally, the man to take Bragin's place after his untimely demise was Rinat Akhmetov, a politician and business mogul who always seemed to be in the right place at the right time after high-profile death during this era. With his rapid rise to success and power, could he have been behind the brazen bombing of his soon-to-be soccer club? Bragin's demise marked an era's end, yet his legacy endured. Akhat Bragin, a titan in the business field and the president of the Shakhtar Donetsk football club, left a vacuum that Rinat Akhmetov filled. Like a phoenix reborn, Akhmetov assumed the role of the fallen president, seizing control of the club and the business empire Bragin once commanded. Under his guidance, Shakhtar Donetsk blossomed, becoming a paragon of achievement in the world of football. The club's triumphs link back to the foundation established by Bragin, his influence reverberating through the stadium corridors, his spirit enshrined in each goal netted, each trophy hoisted. However, Bragin's legacy permeated more than just the football field. It infiltrated the business sphere, resonating in the bustling marketplaces, the flourishing sectors, and Donetsk's thriving economy. Bragin wasn't merely a businessman, he embodied ambition, epitomized resilience, and was a living tribute to the power of grit. One cannot memorialize Bragin without mentioning the mosque in Donetsk, christened after him. A magnificent bastion of faith towering over the city's skyline, the Bragin Mosque serves as a physical commemoration of the man. It's more than just a place of worship. It's a monument to a life spent overcoming obstacles, a life that left an indelible imprint on the city. Despite controversies that marked his life and the enigma surrounding his death, Bragin's legacy remains a force in Donetsk. His narrative intertwines with the city's tapestry, his influence still conspicuous in its roads and its residents. In Donetsk's heart, a mosque stands as a tribute to Bragin's lasting impact on the city. A man of influence, a man of controversy, a man of Donetsk.
Picture this, an ex-Russian MP, an outspoken critic of Putin, assassinated in the bustling city center of Ukraine's capital, Kiev. The subject? Denis Voronenkov, who served Russia's State Duma from 2011 to 2016. He audaciously renounced his Russian citizenship, moving to Ukraine with his wife Maria Maxakova. Voronenkov had much to say about Russian President Vladimir Putin and his policies. His criticisms went beyond mere dissatisfaction. They were serious allegations powerful enough to rattle Russia's government foundations. Voronenkov was more than a critic. He was a defector, a persistent irritant to the Kremlin, and his voice was growing in influence. Faced with real and perilous threats, he sought asylum in Ukraine. Safety, however, is a relative term, especially for someone in Voronenkov's precarious position. A man ready to testify against the very system he once belonged to. And then, on an otherwise ordinary day, Voronenkov's life was suddenly extinguished on the streets of Kiev. A stunning twist of irony as this man, who once graced the halls of power, ended up in a pool of blood in a foreign land. March 23, 2017, a date forever carved into the history of international crime. The crisp spring air was palpable in Kiev, Ukraine's capital. Its urban vibrancy stood in stark contrast to the undercurrent of political unrest. This simmering tension was set to explode catastrophically. Denis Voronenkov, a Russian parliamentary ex-member, was living in exile within Ukraine. Once an influential figure in Moscow's political landscape, he had become an outspoken critic of Putin and Russia's foreign policy. Fearing for his life and the safety of his family, Voronenkov pleaded with the Ukrainian government to provide security details for his family. After numerous death threats, the government acquiesced to his request. Feeling that his freedom was no longer on the brink of extinction, Voronenkov emerged from the Premier Palace Hotel, a city landmark. As he and his bodyguard began their walk, an ominous figure approached. As they crossed paths, this assailant quickly drew his pistol and fired. In a flash, 3 bullets penetrated Voronenkov's head and neck, terminating him instantly. In the subsequent shootout, his bodyguard shot the attacker several times before being shot once himself. Both were rushed to the hospital. Voronenkov's protector pulled through just fine, but the assassin wasn't so lucky. As the final gunshot echoes faded, the harsh reality dawned. Voronenkov lay lifeless on the frigid pavement, his life brutally ended. His attacker met a similarly swift fate, falling at the hands of Voronenkov's bodyguard before any answers came to the light. Every crime yields a roster of suspects. In this instance, the register was as brief as it was disputed. As the dust settled, Ukrainian authorities didn't hesitate to assign blame. Their immediate indictment? The Russian administration. Their conviction was deeply rooted in Voronenkov's high-profile defection and vocal opposition to Putin and Kremlin's strategies. His abrupt, violent demise, they contended, exhibited all the traits of a professional hit. Indeed, Voronenkov wasn't just any defector. His influential voice reverberated internationally. However, suspecting is one thing, validating these claims is another. This is where the narrative veers into the realm of global politics, a chess game with living pieces and astronomical stakes. Thought your ex held a grudge? Nothing competes with global political rivalry. But let's stay focused. Despite the allegations, numerous questions remained unanswered. Who was the young man who fired the shot? How did he approach Voronenkov? And crucially, who benefited most from his demise? The Russian officials in defense strongly refuted any involvement, suggesting Ukraine crafted the entire incident to smear Russia's reputation. Thus, we're left with a complex mesh of claims and counterclaims surrounding a high-profile murder and a concise suspect list. However, the truth remains elusive. As tension escalated and stress mounted, the reality of Voronenkov's murder lingered in obscurity. After the crime, a heavy silence full of accusations and denials blanketed Kiev. This was no typical crime, but a political assassination that impacted not just Ukraine, but resonated throughout Moscow, intensifying the already taut relations between the two countries. Ukrainian authorities immediately jumped to blame Russian counterparts, labeling the act as state terrorism and depicting the Kremlin as a relentless force ready to silence any opposition, regardless of borders. Denis Voronenkov, formerly part of the Russian State Duma, had become one of its fiercest detractors. Having fled to Ukraine and renounced his Russian citizenship, he was set to testify against Ukraine's ex-president, a move that certainly didn't find favor with certain factions in Russia. Russia, however, was swift to deny the allegations, brushing them off as groundless and politically charged. They claimed Voronenkov was a fugitive in Russia due to alleged property fraud worth £5 million, subtly suggesting he might have adversaries beyond Russia's confines. Ultimately, Voronenkov's assassination transcended the realm of crime, becoming a symbol of the entrenched hostility and distrust between Russia and Ukraine, a stark testament to the extremes nations would go to uphold their interests and suppress opposition. As the dust settled, it was evident that Voronenkov's demise had triggered a cascade of international conspiracies and intrigue. So here's the story. Political betrayal, murder, and global mystery wrapped around Denis Voronenkov. Once part of Russia's State Duma, he defected to Ukraine, only to be gunned down outside a Kiev hotel. A staunch critic of Putin and Russian geopolitics, Voronenkov's demise is viewed as a silencing by the Kremlin. This event has stoked the embers of strained Russia-Ukraine relations, with Ukraine accusing Russia of state terrorism. However, the true perpetrators of this chilling crime remain obscured. Voronenkov's tale is a testament to the dangers of political opposition, especially in tension-filled regions. It highlights the perilous journey of those who challenge mightier forces and the extremes these forces may resort to retain control. As we probe into the dark corners of politics and power, we know the apparent is often deceptive.
What transpires when belief and governance clash in the most savage manner conceivable? Today, we embark on a journey into the existence of a man who found himself ensnared in this tumultuous clash. Metropolitan Vladimir of Kiev, originally known as Basil Nikiforovich Bogoyavlensky, born in 1848. Ascending the hierarchy of the Russian Orthodox Church, Metropolitan Vladimir was more than just a religious icon. His unyielding commitment to sermonizing, nurturing knowledge, and contributing to society made him a shining light of aspiration for many. He was a man of initiative, willingly stepping forward in times of crises, such as scarcity and disease outbreaks. He orchestrated aid missions, dispensed spiritual counsel, and exemplified outstanding leadership, gaining the esteem and veneration of both the clergy and the populace. His service across divergent dioceses, including Samara, Georgia, and Moscow, further fortified his image as a champion of the masses. Yet this very stature, the sway he held, was destined to steer him towards a confrontation with the most lethal adversary of his era. 1917 marked a tumultuous period on the global stage. The World War ensnared all in its destructive grasp. Indeed, it was an epoch of turbulence. The deafening reverberations of artillery and the lament of the defeated were not confined to just the European war zones. The tremors of discord reverberated through the heart of Russia, a country on the cusp of revolution. The familiar regime was disintegrating, and in the midst of battle and pandemonium, a new epoch was dawning. In this storm of change, a spiritual figure found himself thrust into a novel role. Metropolitan Vladimir, birth name Basil Nikiforovich Bogoyavlensky, was relocated to Kiev. He stood as a symbol of optimism and a bedrock of fortitude for many, having served with merit in several dioceses across Russia, including Samara, Georgia, and Moscow, garnering the reverence of his brethren and congregants alike. However, Kiev presented him with uncharted territory. The church, once a binding entity, was now being shredded by the same destructive forces tearing at the societal tapestry of Russia. Internal rifts, disputes, and strife reigned. The erstwhile harmonious orchestra of faith had now devolved into a discordant medley. Yet, Metropolitan Vladimir was not one to be easily daunted. He had braved adversities before: scarcity, diseases, spiritual crises. He had always risen to the challenge, leading with a blend of empathy, belief, and bravery. But this was a new demon to battle. The pandemonium was not merely external to the church, it seeped into its hallowed halls too. Nevertheless, he held steadfast, steering through the tempestuous seas of religious strife and political upheaval. He ministered to his congregation, propagated his faith, and made every effort to heal the schisms within the church. He was an immovable force amidst the tempest, a beacon of hope in a period of desolation. Unbeknownst to him, the chaos that had gripped his world was about to land at his very doorstep. January 25th, 1918. A day that would forever be carved into the history of the Russian Orthodox Church. Whispers of Kiev were replaced by the menacing sound of Bolshevik soldiers' march. Their quarry? Metropolitan Vladimir, the symbol of faith and hope for many amidst the political chaos and disunity. Beneath the veil of night, the soldiers breached the Metropolitan sanctuary. Their mission was straightforward: to mute the voice that dared to denounce the revolution and the control of the infamous Grigory Rasputin over the church. As they swept through the hallways, the holy silence of the night was shattered. They found Metropolitan Vladimir, a figure revered for his kindness, devotion, and commitment to his people. To them, however, he was merely a hindrance to their revolutionary ideals. They showed no compassion. The man who had committed his life to preaching, learning, and serving the community was subjected to horrific treatment. The Bolshevik soldiers tormented Metropolitan Vladimir, their savage actions reflecting the brutality of the era. The accounts of the torment remain a horrifying testament to the savageness of the Bolshevik soldiers. They weren't there to imprison or exile him. The Metropolitan met a horrific end at the mercy of his tormentors. His life, devoted to service, was cruelly terminated. His corpse, once a vessel of his steadfast faith, was left disfigured, a stark reminder of the price of his beliefs. The news of his demise reverberated through the community. The figure who once stood as a tower of resilience during crises, famine, and epidemics had fallen prey to the very upheaval he had endeavored to mitigate. In the end, the man of faith met a most horrific demise. The assassination of Metropolitan Vladimir sent tremors through both the church and the nation. The aftermath of this horrific act was filled with an almost tangible sense of fear and bewilderment. This was not a simple case of loss. It was a brazen attack on the church and its disciples. The church, now devoid of a leader who had been a beacon during stormy times, was left staggering. The followers were submerged in sorrow, their faith rattled profoundly. The population was also plunged into terror. Metropolitan Vladimir was more than a religious icon. He embodied strength and optimism. He had been an uplifting voice for the unheard, a solace to the impoverished, and an ally for those grappling with addiction. His passing created a vacuum, his absence a profound affliction in the community's heart. The inquiry into the Metropolitan's assassination was laden with obstacles. The political atmosphere was charged, the Bolshevik soldiers were merciless, and the nation was in disarray. In the aftermath of the horrific execution, the most obvious theory to why Metropolitan Vladimir was targeted was his religious stance. In earlier writings, he was vehemently opposed to the separation of the church within Russia. To make matters worse for Metropolitan, he openly discussed his concerns about the criminal and anti-Christian intentions of those responsible for the collaboration of the book, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. Could his audacious claims be the reason a group of soldiers in the midst of civil war would meticulously hunt and execute a man of faith? Indeed, even posthumously, Metropolitan Vladimir's influence persisted. His earthly existence reached a brutal conclusion, yet his impact endured, echoing beyond the constraints of time and place. His existence was a testament of commitment and devotion, a beacon of spirituality in a world rapidly straying from its divine path. His fortitude in adversity, his steadfast dedication to truth, and his profound affection for his congregation imprinted an enduring mark on the collective psyche of the Orthodox Church. The Orthodox Church of Russia, acknowledging his sacrifice and profound influence, canonized him in 1992, an extraordinary acknowledgement and the apex of recognition the Church could confer. Such was a testament to his persistent sway and the profound reverence he evoked. His sacrifice is honored annually on January 25th, a day of solemn commemoration and deep appreciation. On this day, the Church salutes Metropolitan Vladimir, along with other martyrs and confessors who met cruel fates at the hands of the Soviets. This day is dedicated to recollecting their sacrifices, their displayed bravery, and the faith they embodied. These memorial ceremonies serve as powerful reminders of faith's strength and the resilience of the human spirit. They also act as catalysts, urging us to emulate the virtues that these martyrs and confessors exemplified. Metropolitan Vladimir's life and sacrifice have galvanized countless individuals to live their faith with more authenticity, to serve their communities with selflessness, and to uphold truth, even when faced with seemingly insurmountable challenges. His legacy reverberates, inspiring new generations to uphold the flame of faith and service. Although Metropolitan Vladimir's life was tragically truncated, his legacy of faith and service continues to illuminate our world, even a century after his sacrifice.
What transpires when a prominent judge and his kin fall prey to a horrific crime? This isn't a theoretical conundrum, but a frightening reality that took place in Kharkiv, Ukraine. Let's journey back not too long ago to December 15th, 2012. It's a chilly afternoon and one man is poised to have a celebratory day with his family. Vladimir Trofimov, a distinguished judge for 30 years in Ukraine, was enjoying the day commemorated for the judiciary heads, Judges' Day. However, a day that was scheduled for family fun and relaxation unexpectedly transformed into one of the most gruesome homicides ever witnessed in the country. That Tuesday began as most mid-December days. It was a cloudy, cold afternoon in Kharkiv, and Judge Trofimov had plans to spend the day with his family in honor of his 30-year career as a man of the court. Vladimir had a distinguished service and was renowned by his colleagues and friends as a fair and honest judge. Instead of going out, he and his family decided on a more intimate celebration with his son, Sergei, and his girlfriend, Marina Zawareva, in Vladimir's luxury apartment in eastern Kharkiv. But this quaint family get-together soon became the scene of a brutal bloodbath that would be discovered later by a family member arriving at the party. This poor, unsuspecting kin strolled through the unlocked door of the apartment with hopes of hugs and cheers, only to discover all four had been horrifically slain, with their bodies scattered across the living room floor. When investigators arrived on the scene, there were no signs of forced entry or lock tampering. As detectives entered the living room, the true horror of the event struck to their very core. Each member had not just been savagely killed, but all four had also been decapitated. To make matters worse, in a world full of security and cameras, no system was found in the apartment that could help identify the intruders or provide any clues as to why this heinous act was performed. As investigators dissected the crime scene, several antiques and rare coins were clearly missing, providing one tangible theory as to why someone would want to kill the esteemed judge and his family. Trofimov was well known for his collection of rare items ranging from World War II medals, the ancient Chinese statuettes. But could theft really be the motive to storm a judge's celebration on Judges' Day, to not only steal but maim and murder four innocent lives in such a gruesome, appalling manner? As news of this crime began disseminating, theories started to unravel throughout the community and country. Since the collapse of the Soviet Union, many judges in ex-Soviet-controlled territories were consistently harassed and bribed to free prisoners or fix verdicts in crucial cases. Could Judge Trofimov, known for his stellar career and sentencing, have been a target in this particular situation? As we delve deeper into this unthinkable crime, the gut-wrenching details begin to paint a vivid picture of how this scenario unfolded and reveal possible reasons why. The following days after the homicides were a whirlwind of chaos. To mitigate these trying times, the chief prosecutor of Ukraine, Viktor Pshonka, personally flew into Kharkiv to handle the case. To ensure his success, he was accompanied by the SBU Secret Services to assist with the political assassination probe. Taking command, he immediately requested detailed inquiries into each relative, neighbor and associate of the slain family members. The SBU and local authorities combined forces, working day and night, searching diligently for any glimmer of hope to crack open this case. However, after days of questioning and re-examining each person, no suspects were apprehended. With no witnesses or any home security footage, the investigation was dead in the water before it could set sail. On the scene, the appalling massacre was brutal enough in its nature. The severings were rigid, making the weapon difficult to pinpoint. However, the detectives narrowed down the possibility to a machete, a sword, or an axe. But to add insult to injury, not only was the entire family decapitated, all of their heads were taken. The find, spine-chilling and haunting to the soul, immediately brought back memories to the chief prosecutor of the investigatory journalist Georgy Gongadze, who went missing back in 2000. He was reportedly working on a story where someone didn't want him looking and was later found dead in the woods with his head severed and unaccounted for. Even more discouraging, after a thorough examination of the bodies, it was discovered that Judge Trofimov, his wife Irina, and the son's girlfriend Marina were all killed before having their heads removed. But the son, Sergei, was actually decapitated while still alive. This gruesome discovery was a massive blow to the community and the investigation. If this was a robbery, then why the horrific overkill? And who was the real target? Was the son made to watch as retribution? Or was it the other way around? It's been over 8 years since the haunting homicides occurred in Trofimov's eastern Kharkiv apartment, and to this day, none of their heads have ever surfaced. The burglary turned to beheading theory still doesn't sit well with most true crime enthusiasts. Some have speculated that since the apartment was located in a former Soviet community and there was no indication of a break-in or forced entry, that maybe someone in Russia still had access to a master key that could allow them entrance. With the son, Sergei, being the only member to be decapitated while still living, it's difficult to tell if he was the real target or not. If the goal was to inflict as much pain on the judge as possible, why not all three? If the son was meant to watch his family die, then what could be the reason someone would want Sergei dead? Let us know down below in the comments if you agree with any of the theories presented, or let us know if you have any theories of your own. And of course, stay safe and secure, my friends.